there isn't a business out there today that doesn't have opportunities that we can help with. So we share in the savings.
Gotcha.
So if we save a business $1 million a year, we share 50% of that. Be realistic and be willing to dream bigger. And it's very possible if you dream bigger, you actually might obtain bigger.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast, where you can escape the corporate trap through franchise ownership. Here's your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, the Franchise Guide.
Okay, and welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, your Franchise Guide, the show where we help corporate executives experience time and financial freedom. Thanks for joining us today. We have a very special guest. We listened to your suggestions. You were sick of hearing from me, so we brought on some rock star guests. And today we have Lisa Hennigar from Exec Group. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. We planned this way back when, and then I had to reschedule on you, so I'm glad we got to chat today. So before we dive in, I have so many great things I want to ask you and talk about your background and things like that. But I always said I used to give the bio. I want you to give your kind of background. Who is Lisa and how did you get into franchising? Because only my guests will say it best. So
I love franchising. It has absolutely changed my life. I love it. I have such passion for it. My kids who are trying to figure out what they want to do in life and think they need to, sometimes they get overwhelmed because they're like, you love what you're doing. Why do you love working so much? I answered a newspaper ad back in the day, 22 years ago, which is not even a thing today. And a guy took a chance on me and he literally said, I'm going to take a chance on you. We both were from the printing industry. And he said, I want to mentor you because you got chutzpah. And I owe so much of how I think and how I move in franchising to him, quite honestly. So my background has very much been a change agent, very much for the franchisees, which sometimes causes me a problem because I'm always challenging the franchisor to do better, to do more, to support, and just show that profitability to franchisees. So I've been on both sides of the fence of franchise development, operations, and I've also been a consultant for a minute. But where I really love is being at the franchisor level and making a difference. So I see the world through change agent, always being better tomorrow than we were today, and being as efficient and profitable as possible, which is Era is just such a good fit for me overall as a brand. So I'm excited to talk with you a little bit more today about both of those things.
Awesome. That's very exciting. And yeah, it makes a big difference when you've experienced both sides, a consultant on the franchisor side, and just the different industries. It gives you a better, I think, perspective, kind of a more of this holistic view of how everything works and, what areas of improvement and things like that. So speaking of areas of improvement for small business, tell us a little bit about Exec Group. Who is Exec Group? What services do they offer? I guess we'll start there.
So we are the largest cost intelligence consulting firm in the world that probably your guests have never heard of. And so what we do, we specialize in reducing indirect costs and improving profitability, saving the people. Because a lot of companies go to the people first, and that's just backwards. So we're focused on finding out efficiencies through pricing, process, and policy. And the beauty about our brand, too, is there's such an ecosystem because as people are coming out of corporate world, which they have just the most wisdom, the most experience, or they're being pushed out today, which is why we've come in contact, because you're able to share our brand with them. But we're able to really take that knowledge so that business owner, those C-suite, can focus on their core business.
Right.
Well, we come alongside them, no pressure, no embarrassment, but to improve their business. And we happen to find a lot for them that allows them to bring in more people, maybe expand their business, increase their technology. So it allows them to be more strategic and make better decisions on the growth of their business from our partnership.
I like that. And what did you call it in the beginning? Because we've been working together, and I think that was the first time I've heard this. Did you
The
say
cost intelligence.
cost intelligence?
Yeah.
Wow, I like that. I really like. How come I haven't heard that before? Cost intelligence. That's so cool.
Funny story. A year ago, we changed our branding from expense reduction analyst to error group. And for those who've been around a while, it's been a hard we're expense reduction analyst, but we're not. And as part of the rebrand, it was really looking at what is it that we do? And here's the beauty. We've been around for 32 years. We're in 64 countries, 1,000 consultants. Can you imagine the data points that we've collected over the years? So
Absolutely.
we took those data points, we took the benchmarking, the indexes, we've got AI, we've got machine learning, and we built this machine. That's where cost intelligence came from. Our CEO, it was at our conference last year, and he was sitting in the middle. At the end, everyone had gone off either to their room or to go socialize. And I needed to chat with them. And he was sitting there in the room. And I went, jerkly. He says, Lisa, I think we should be talking about cost intelligence because that's really what we do. And he went out and he owned that. We own that URL. And we've been slow to it, but it's really about what does that mean? Well, we built on value, not our time, which is typical consultancy work.
Right.
And that is the essence of what ERA does. And there's so many great things that I hope we get into today to talk about what do most of your people want? Quality of life. What does that mean? Usually it means doing the things that they want, but many and oftentimes you've got to work in your business long enough to get there, and it's already built into our sauce, so it's super cool.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, it's funny. I've been doing this for a while, and when you talk to people and you ask them about, when they think of franchising, what's the first thing they think of? And they'll mention some of the fast food chains. They have no idea that there's 4,000, just say roughly 4,000 franchises in the US. And then you start breaking down the categories and they're shocked. They're shocked that there is things like an error group, providing cost intelligence and business coaching and executive recruitment and all these other types of businesses. Their mind just automatically goes to fast food. So they're really intrigued by that. And what also intrigues them is that the investment is nowhere near what it costs for a full build out of a fast food restaurant. So you definitely grab their interest. Switching gears a little bit on we covered what ERA does. So who is a good fit? Because you had talked about, what are your goals and, time freedom and why are you looking into business ownership? But now we have to kind of look within to say, okay, now that we know what we want, what are my skill sets? What are the transferable skill sets? Maybe I'm coming out of Wall Street like I did over 20 years ago. So who is that? We'll call it franchise avatar.
I would say that it's someone who always has some level of entrepreneurial spirit, right? So if it's someone who just cannot sleep at night being a business owner, they're not for us. It's someone who's from the professional world. And we're looking for probably the least amount of experience would be 10 to 12 years. That candidate that can sit in front of the C-suite and is comfortable taking ideas and communicating them in a way that create dialogue that then create value. That's really the essence of who we need. And someone who I think is ready. And to me, ready means maybe they're burnt out, maybe they're undervalued, maybe their voice is not heard. I think those are the optimum candidates because they get it. They've sat in those rooms and had to been silent, or they've not been invited into those rooms. And they want to be bigger part of that, and they're community focused and they like people. So it sounds very simple, and most people would probably say, well, that's me. But is it? Do you really like people? Because that's a big part of our business. It starts and ends with people, everything. But it's not so much of what you've done. It's the intention of your candidate. Mm-hmm. So I should be talking to a lot of people, to be honest with you.
That fits a lot. And this is definitely a people business. And this is a conversation you would think most small businesses would be open to having, doing a full analysis of their entire business, not just one key area, to see where there can be cuts, some cost savings, maybe some consolidation and things like that. So you would think people, business owners would be overly excited given the value proposition, the way that the proposal, the consultation works and things like that. One, I know the answer, but just for everyone listening in, a lot of people hear this and maybe it's the way I'm describing it, but they're like, you know what? I'm not an accountant. I don't run P&Ls and balance sheets. And I'll come back and say that this is not accounting. So talk to us a little bit about, the areas that you're potentially able, the number of areas, maybe some ideas, some samples maybe of areas you can potentially save a small business on.
No, I love that question because you're right. There's a lot of confusion around our brand and understanding. And many people think it's a financial model.
Right.
It's not. It's not. It's a consulting model, which a lot of people think because cost is in there. We're looking at indirect cost of a business, pricing, process, and policy. Okay. And so when you look at the joint venture model, because all of the people who do the work in our business are joint venturing together from their expertises. And I'm just going to give you the U.S. because that's where we are, and that's what I'm overseeing is North America's. We have over 75 different areas of expertise here at ERA.
Wow.
And if you want to get granular, which you can, I would say it is between 200 and 300 expertises. What do I mean by that? Solar. You look at utilities. It could be oil. It could be electricity. It could be solar. Okay. You look at healthcare. It could be senior. It could be operations. It could be equipment. It could be dental. And we have that breadth of expertise. And so you might have someone out there who's coming from a marketing background and they're like, I cannot imagine getting another job. I'm just done. They could be a great candidate. You might have someone who has been in the SaaS area. They could be a great candidate as long as they enjoy talking with people. Who's not the best candidate for us is someone who likes spreadsheets more than people.
I like that. That answers that. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You don't need to be an expert. It sounds like ERA will train you in all these areas. The joint venture, if I understood correctly, you're working with other franchisees across the country in order to help with those specific areas. And I don't know if you can share this, and if not, that's okay. But are you able to share, what does this cost? Is there even a cost for the analysis? Is there anything you can share?
I can share anything you ask me today.
Let's do it. Let's share it.
So we're sharing. No, that's the beauty. We have a promise to our potential client that we will give you an assessment because we know there's a couple exceptions and they're very well-known nonprofits that we've looked at, but that's it. And I can say this with a lot of confidence. There isn't a business out there today that doesn't have opportunities that we can help with. And we're typically focused on that 10 million to 250 million, all the way up into the billions. So as we're looking at their business, we have all those data points that I was talking to you about. So all we need is their general ledger and P&L. Now, of course, there's some categorization and sometimes there's some back and forth, but it's fairly easy. We can put that into our machine and we can bring that back and show them their business in a way that they cannot have all systems connecting. And so we can have some great dialogue with them. And so it's not even a hard sell for us. Then it becomes, these are the areas of the biggest opportunity. We could get started on them today. And going back to our expertises, and we just had a group validation call. We have a guy who does ingredients, food ingredients. Getting down, and we were talking about bread. And he was talking about an ingredient that the client was using was a pharmaceutical grade. They didn't know that. So they were always doing what they had always done. So he came in and said, this product is equivalent and it costs $2,000 less a barrel. And they were buying millions of barrels.
Sometimes you don't even realize it's something you're missing, that something as simple as that, and that's just one area.
To that level
Yeah.
of expertise is what we can bring to a client. And who thinks of an ingredient expert in cost intelligence? But that's the scope and the breadth that we can bring. You think of sea freight. When all those boats were sitting out in California, we saw it on the news in 2020, our clients weren't dealing with that because our experts knew those things were coming before they were, and they knew how to move around them. So our clients, that Eric's client, did not have the disruption that much of the rest of the United States was dealing with.
That's amazing. What what does it look like for the client that is open to that? Sounds like a free analysis, and then can you share costs, or what does that look like?
So we share in the savings.
Gotcha.
So if we save a business $1 million a year, we share 50% of that. And when I say we, I mean our franchise owners,
Right.
and their collective group. That's how it works. And so a good way to think about it is when we go in and work with a client, here's their level of expenses. You take all their line items and you group them. Here's their expenses. When we come in and we do our work, now their expenses are here. So we bill on that gap for the next 3 years, and we share in that savings with that client so they can take that 50% and push it into their business in a very strategic manner to either hire more people, invest in technology, grow their footprint, whatever is their, take some more profit, whatever is their goal.
Love that. Yeah, that's huge. And what business isn't looking in an up or down market looking to save expenses and lower their costs? So I really like that.
To add one more thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going back to your potential client, this is the beauty too, because as we bill on value to our client, our franchisees benefit from the value to their bank account. And how much time are they spending? Are they grinding out a 40-hour week for that? No, they're not. And we will monitor it, but there's very little time that gets invested into this on the long term. It's more heavy up front, but then we're staying there as a continual advisor monitoring. And so this isn't a 40-hour a week grinded out. Of course, I don't want to use that word passive investment because we want our owners to be in the business, but they're not sitting at a desk for 40 hours a week. They're not doing it.
And because you're essentially doing all the work up front and creating correct me if I'm wrong, these are annuities in a way. So you're saving if it's lowering, just to keep it simple, that ingredient, and it's $100,000 every single month. It may be $100,000 for however length of time that the agreement is based upon. So the work is done up front, and then you're essentially getting those. As long as they're getting the savings, you're getting
and
half
because
of
of the joint venture.
Yep.
Because someone else that they partnered with is doing that work.
Right.
And then because they brought the client and they own the relationship and they put that team together, they're benefiting from watching their team members. And typically we're signing 5 projects with every client or more. So you got 5 people doing work that you as the franchise owner are benefiting from them doing that work.
Right.
And
Awesome.
I don't know anything that exists like that out there today.
It is very unique. I know that I would say almost 100% of the time people had no idea that this type of business that I personally have worked with, that this existed. So that's part of the platform, part of the show, part of everything we do is education based. We like to let people know what's out there, level the playing field, so you have a really good understanding of not just franchising, but what's out there and how to go about finding the right fit. So we kind of talked about who is the right fit, the franchise avatar, what the business does. So, the people listening in on the show, most of them are corporate execs. They are looking, maybe they had a side business, an Airbnb or something on the side, but they're looking for either creating a safety net for their job in the event of the next downsizing, or like myself, I hated my job and was not happy whatsoever. Long commute, didn't like the role, and wanted an exit So what advice would you give to someone that is early on in the stages, trying to figure out if franchise or business ownership is the right fit? Any advice from, either a book recommendation or a good place to start? Because I always like to ask this question to all my guests.
Well, this just kind of came up this week. I know the value of a coach, a consultant. And I think that's the first place, that find someone like yourself who is doing this on a day-to-day basis, who's investing into it, who's taken the time. I know we've had many conversations for you to learn my brand. I was on a introduction call, and the gal that I was talking with said, and it's one of your franchisors, and she was saying she wanted to own a business, and she was at the hair salon, and they said, oh, well, this person used a franchise coach,
Mhm.
and she didn't even know it existed. So I think that's a really good
Yeah.
advice. I am amazed when people, they come in and they just expect, they know there's so much involved in franchising. And to have someone like you educating them and walking them through, I think it starts there. The next I'm going to say is, why are you doing it? And really getting real with that.
Mhm.
I think people are running towards something. They're running away from something, walking, striding. We all have different degrees of that. You're right. It's how bad is it, or how bad do you want it? What's driving you? I think someone needs to get real with that, because you can spend a lot of time learning and talking, but if you're not willing to execute, so I would say, ask yourself, like, are you willing to define why, what it might look like? And I'm not talking picking the brand. I'm saying, what's the characteristics?
Right.
And then getting real with yourself if you're ready to execute and really want that and be willing to do what it takes to get it. That's my personal opinion of just being involved and watching people and meeting people that should move forward and don't because they're scared. And I think that's my biggest frustration in franchising is seeing someone so clearly like, oh my God, you could be amazing, and know that they could. And then watching them not be able to decide. You and I worked with someone like that. And I'm so thankful that he finally got the courage to do it, and he's having a great experience. And that's the fun in it, I think, for people like you and I.
It's a lot. It's an emotional roller coaster. There's some fear, anxiety, and excitement all wrapped into one. I think the thing that helps with anxiety and fear is education, information. Not just I'll kind of figure it out on my own. It's talking to people, seeing if the fit's there, and ultimately there's got to be a little bit of pain, or there's got to be a lot of pain, right? If you have, I talk to a lot of people that have well-paying jobs and they just want another income stream. Well, that's a franchise could be another income stream. It is an investment, but there's going to be a time commitment. This isn't investing in the stock market where you're just monitoring your stocks once a week or once a month. So it's really making sure everything adds up. If you don't have the time to management, it may not be a good fit, because it is not a passive opportunity like we see in the stock market, in real estate syndication and things like that, where there's really not much there aside from doing a little research, investing, and then monitoring the performance on a monthly basis. So it's making sure everything lines up. And when people say, how successful are you in placing franchises? I go, I don't even know what that question means. It's actually a real, it's meant well, but it's a really silly question, because my success, I always say, if you learn something from me, forget about if you bought a franchise. If you learn something, great, but it's not my job to say you have to sign a franchise. My job is to educate, show you the way. And there's a percentage of people that move forward, but I don't sign the agreement. I'm not the one saying you have to sign today. We're not, buying a car here and it's the sale's up today. So my success is if you learn something, if you gain something, that's great. But it's up to you, that person looking to buy to invest in the franchise, to do your homework and make that decision based off of yourself, your family's support and due diligence. So this is a phenomenal opportunity if the fit's there, but you owe it to yourself to pick up the phone and have a conversation. And it starts
I love
with,
that.
yeah.
I'm
is the
thinking
fit
about
there?
our client base, the people that you send to us, and they're highly successful. highly intelligent. And I would just add in there, be willing to know that you don't know everything, even though you know a lot
Right.
about something. And then seeking the person out that you feel you can trust, because everyone in our industry is not predatory. In fact, we have the same goals that they do, is finding the right fit. And that's what I would say to someone who's out there. If you're not working with the coach that you feel that way, find that coach.
Right.
Because they're out there. And I think that makes a big difference too. Someone who's listening to you, and sometimes you might not like their feedback, but you need to hear it.
Yes, you got to be open and honest. Some people call me, they're gung ho on the brand, they love it, and I'll just say, you know what, unfortunately, that's not going to work. And they'll say, why isn't it going to work? Well, I know who the avatar is, but I also know if they're even available in your state or if they're even sold out. And I always say, start with yourself, as you mentioned. What's the goal here? What's the ideal business? Is it to create a legacy? Is it to get out of the job you hate and create some time and financial freedom? Would you have maybe a longer outlook? But figure all that out. And then the brands, I think, come in towards the end, because we don't know what's a good fit until we have a few phone calls and you do a little bit of soul searching and figuring out if everyone's on board and whose role is going to be what. Will you have partners? There's a lot there. So for those asking, what's the hot franchise? You could pull up the top 500 list on Entrepreneur Magazine if that's what you consider the top 500. I had Jason Pfeiffer, from Entrepreneur Magazine, their editor-in-chief. You could work off of that, but my challenge to everyone listening is figure out what this ideal business looks like, whether it's working with myself or another coach, or you're doing it on your own. Figure that out, and then talk to an industry insider to see what are the best kind of opportunities and resales in your market. Anything else we have not talked about that you would like to bring up, whether it be on our group or franchising in general?
Well, I think something that can help you help them, and ultimately help us, because then when they get to us, that they should be talking to us. And that's the challenge. And looking at the characteristic of a business, and I'm not saying, it's kind of like buying a house. You're not looking at a 7-bedroom if you're looking for a 2-bedroom. You're not looking at a 5-car garage if you want a 2-car garage. You're not looking at a city if you want to be on the water. And I think looking and saying, who do I want to work with? Looking at those kind of characteristics. What are the kind of things that you love to do? What are the things you hate? But you can't not take a business because there's going to be some things you hate. What you want to do is limit those things you hate, because unfortunately, it's not all, sunshine and rainbows.
Right.
And so I think getting real with those things can help you really help them and say, wow, based on this, I'm going to show you this, because you want to tap into this side. And even though you haven't been doing it for 20 years because you've been in this role, that's who you are.
Right.
So I think those are some of the things that I wish that I could just tell everyone that's looking at business. Like, it starts with you, and you can design this however you want. The other thing that I would say is dream bigger, not a fantasy dream, because I'm not about that. What do you want? What does it look like? You want that second home? You want that summer in Italy? What do you want?
Right.
Because it starts with that. Because if you want that summer in Italy, my brand can do it. But if you have a window cleaning, that might be tougher. It might be eventually. And I think that can help you when you're talking to them. But what I find is a lot of people think it's a fantasy, and it's pushed so far down,
Right.
that even though they want it, they won't breathe it. And I think if they would just breathe it, then they can have it. And I know that sounds a little foo-foo, but I've seen it. And we just had a group validation call, and this owner, he wanted to make $250,000 a year. If he invested in our business, he'd be happy with that and the outcome. Now, I'm not making an earnings claim, but this gentleman read that. He got paid that out in 1 month because of our model. Not the first month,
Right.
but he so far surpassed that. And so that's what I'm talking about. It's just getting real with what is it that you want, being realistic and being willing to dream bigger. And it's very possible if you dream bigger, you actually might obtain bigger.
Love that. And write it down. I did a show just on that, on goal planning and creating your massive action plan, which I learned from Tony Robbins back when I bought his first Getting the Edge on cassette from QVC. You know, I'm dating
We have so
myself.
much in common.
Yeah, it's not a record, as my kids would make fun of me. It's an actual cassette. But yeah, you know, writing it down, and I have my goals. I review them every single day. It takes all of 5 seconds, but having something about having it in front of you and
Yes.
constantly reminding yourself, because sometimes you go into a tailspin. Sometimes you kind of forget why you did all this. You had a bad month, a bad day. So think the
I thought of 2
reminders.
books now that you're talking.
Okay, hit it.
Think and Grow Rich.
Okay, Napoleon Hill.
I have so many copies of that just so I can give them to people. Now, whether they read them or not, I don't know. And then EOS by Gino
Traction.
and Traction. I think that gets you in the mode of thinking like a business owner and working on the business, not in the business. And I think from just a shared mentality, most of the people that you're going to talk to, especially when you get to the higher level at the franchisors, probably are reading that book and using some form of it. So I would say start with that, because now you've got that common language. Because you want to talk to the best top owners in any franchise system. Chances are they're using some of that mentality.
Love that. I want to make one comment about Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. I had someone make a comment to me years ago. This has got to be over 10 years ago. This person, I don't think read the book or understood the book, but he's like, well, it's not all about riches. There's other things that are, you know, much more important. And I looked at him and said, I don't think you read the book. I think I missed riches, right? If you think it and believe it, it will happen. Can mean many things. Riches literally maybe means money, but riches can also mean time freedom and so many other, having great memories and travel and all this other stuff doesn't necessarily just mean money. And I think they misinterpreted, or they just didn't read the book. But you know, for anyone listening in, that was just a comment that has stuck to me. It's been over 15 years when that person had mentioned that to me. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So 2 phenomenal books.
I have a sign in my house. And I have it right by the kitchen so my girls will read it. Because we meet these people, and I probably was one of those people because that's the generation I came from. But it says, the secret to having everything you want is already believing you do. And what that really means is to be happy and have the gratitude with where you are. Because when you're truly happy with what you have, you can have more. And I've seen that in my own life. And I think that's part of the fun of getting older and getting these wrinkles and all these other things is having that wisdom and truly learning to be happy. And I love franchising because I think if it's done right, it changes people's lives. And I'm never going to stop. I go to sleep, I wake up, anything I do is it's all entrepreneurism. And I look at it of getting that person from here to where they want to be. And I do believe that our country was founded on entrepreneurism. And so why doesn't it make sense? It does. It's the best. We're the best GDP. I mean, you look at the economy, it is small business ownership that keeps things going. People don't realize.
Amen. No, I love that. Yeah, that was a great way to kind of end the show here. One last thing, and I'm going to put you on the spot here. So I always ask our guests interesting fact. I'm going to start off with a mutual interesting fact. So I don't think I've ever met someone as passionate and such a big a fan of the movie Boiler Room. I don't know, remember what year was that? 93, 95? I forget, but it was pretty funny. Big fans of the show. If anyone's listening in, I came from the investment world, so there's that came out at the exact time I was getting my Series 7 license and all that. So I thought that was pretty funny. So I will throw that there. I haven't watched that movie in a while, and once you brought it up, it brought a smile to my face and some some great memories. Can you name another, or we'll leave it at that? Fun fact about Lisa.
Fun fact about Lisa. I think people see me and unless they really know me, they don't know me. I am happiest with my hair out, some yoga pants in the woods. I've got this big old RV that I love to take around to national parks. I just like the simple thing, and everything I do is just about being appreciative of the little things that have made us who we are. And we have so much privilege in this country. It's taken me a long time to realize that. I'm going to get all emotional, but I think that's it. It's just taking the time to figure out what do you care about and do more of it. That's probably the thing that most people don't know about me, because I'm very intense and, I'm tough, but I have a very, very soft side to me that most people never get to see.
That's it. So get on the phone, talk to Lisa, get to that soft side. And I appreciate that was awesome. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate you sharing every time we have these conversations. I learned something new. It's cost intelligence. That's stuck in my mind. I really like that. I'm gonna have to use that here in the blog post.
And we're gonna do better. We're gonna get you better stuff. I'm working on that. So I'm gonna rebrand everything. So when you guys are talking about it, you're gonna be like, "What's this company? We used to say something else." I am gonna change the game, because that's where we are at Era. I mean, we are no longer expense reduction analysts, and it is just so profound. So I owe that to you. So push on me and make sure I get it to you, because I'm working on it.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely be in touch and talking. Looking forward to sharing the final show, the final product. And again, I really appreciate your time. I know you're extremely busy. So thanks again for coming on the show, and looking forward to chatting very soon.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to learn how to make the transition from corporate to owning your franchise, join Giuseppe on the next episode. You can also follow on all social media platforms and achieve financial and time freedom today.